Hey everybody, my name is Emily. Welcome back to my homestead and week 4 of the 2025 Three Rivers Challenge, a pantry challenge where my family is trying to eat only from the storage we have in our home, and our family is making the exception of purchasing milk during the months of January and February for this challenge. Sunday night we had leftovers, but Monday here I am making breakfast starting with bacon in the oven, and then I'm going to shred up these potatoes to make some hash browns. These will be more potatoes than we will eat for this dinner, but that is okay because I will use the leftover hash browns with my breakfast for the rest of the week. I go ahead and season these with garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, little cayenne, salt, and pepper. And I realize my bowl is way too small, so I grab a bigger bowl and get it all mixed together. Then I get my cast iron skillet heated up, pour in a little olive oil, and then put the potatoes in. It's important to squeeze the liquid out of them, and then I spread them out all over the bottom of the skillet with the spatula. Meanwhile, the bacon had finished baking in the oven, and I let the grease cool a little bit, and then I'm pouring it into a container to save in the refrigerator for later use. Once I get this poured in here, I will let it cool on the counter before it gets a lid and goes in the fridge. The next component I will start working on is baked apples. My youngest had requested that I make this for dinner, and we have some apples that need used up, so I was happy to oblige. In hindsight, I should have used my apple core to remove the core before slicing these apples in half. This was a little tedious getting the cores out this way, but I'd already cut them, so I had to go with it. And I put them cut side down in a glass baking dish, add a little bit of water, and then I will cover them with saran wrap. These will go in the microwave and bake for about 5 minutes. Once the apples are tender, I flip them all over, add a little butter to each apple half, and then sprinkle them generously with cinnamon and sugar. Then I will cover it back up, pop it back in the microwave just long enough to melt the butter. And this will serve as a kind of dessert for this evening's meal. And now we'll get back to the hash browns. I go through quite a bit of oil when I'm making these, and I add oil to the pan between each round, and it's important to get a nice even layer across the pan so they cook evenly. You squeeze out the juice because there is quite a bit of excess, as you can see in the bottom of this bowl. Another thing we have excess of right now is eggs. We have quite a few eggs. Some of our younger chickens have started laying, and we have quite the assortment of beautiful colors. I get enough for dinner tonight washed up, crack them all into a bowl, and whisk them up with a fork. And once all of the hash browns are finished being made, these will go into the cast iron skillet and become the next part of our dinner. While I'm waiting on the last hash brown to cook, I go ahead and refill my bottle of oil that I keep in the kitchen with the one that I keep in the basement. Before adding the eggs to the pan, I did drain out the extra oil and removed any little pieces of potato that were left behind. Then I added butter to the pan, and once that was all melted, I got the eggs in there, and these cook up very quickly. The ketchup bottle in the fridge had very little left in it, so I brought up the home canned ketchup made by my husband's aunt and got that ready for the meal. I gave it a little taste test. It's pretty liquidy, but it tastes okay, and everybody seemed to like it with their hash browns. So here is the finished dinner. I also made California blend vegetables to go with everything, and as always, breakfast for dinner was a huge hit. On Tuesday, I'm making a chicken in the crock pot. This time my spice rub was salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and rosemary. And once I get it in the crock pot, it cooks for probably around 6 hours. Here I started to make some panko breadcrumbs for a casserole I'm going to make to go with this meal. You just blend up some bread, flatten it out on a baking sheet, and bake it at 300 degrees for about 8 minutes, I think it was. It's not very long. You just check it every couple minutes to make sure it doesn't burn. And then when I was finished with that, I made another round. I would have made it all at the same time, but my daughter had convinced me once the first round was already baking that I should make mozzarella sticks to go with dinner tonight. She has been asking me to get these for her outside of the home, and I'm always telling her no, but I told her that I would learn how to make them, and so I went ahead and made some more panko breadcrumbs. And I was able to do this because we had one more package of string cheese left in the refrigerator. The next thing I'm doing is pulling out some cream of chicken soup that I made last week and froze in this container, and I'm going to get this thawed out for that casserole. Once the second round of breadcrumbs was out of the oven, I blended them up finer. I needed 1.5 cups for this recipe, which was basically exactly what I made on this second round. So that worked out great. I go ahead and add pepper, oregano, basil, parsley, garlic powder, and some salt to these breadcrumbs, and then blend them up so they are much more fine. And then these will get poured into a shallow bowl. In a second bowl, I crack a couple of eggs and get those beat up with a fork. And then we will start preparing the cheese. This recipe was for 15 mozzarella sticks, which was exactly the number of string cheese sticks we had left in the fridge. 12 from a new package and 3 from the one that was already open. So we get the string cheese dipped into the egg first and then coated in breadcrumbs, and the youngest wants to help, which does make it actually take longer, I think, or at least it feels like it takes longer, but I want to encourage her to learn how to cook things, and so it just takes a little longer. It ended up looking like they just didn't have enough coating on them, and they didn't look like a mozzarella stick that you would get at a restaurant. So I decided to go ahead and dip them in the egg and the breadcrumbs a second time. We didn't have enough breadcrumbs left to do all of them. It turns out that I missed a step in the recipe. We were supposed to dredge them in flour, then egg, then breadcrumbs. Of course, I'm not sure that the flour would have stuck to the string cheese sticks because they are sort of dry. But if I make these again, I will probably just make a larger amount of the breadcrumb mixture because they tasted and looked fantastic, the ones that had the double coating, and you'll see later that the ones that only had a single coating did not turn out so well at all. They still tasted good. And you can see here that these look more like a traditional mozzarella stick, and these have the single coating, and they go in the freezer for about an hour. Then I start on this casserole. I have this bag of summer squash in the freezer and wanted to use that up in some sort of way, and so I looked up casserole recipes, and this is the one that I went with, and this one was gross. Nobody liked it. It ended up mostly going to the chickens. But I'll tell you what was in it anyway, so in case you happen upon a squash casserole recipe like this, you know to avoid it. It had cream of chicken soup, sour cream, I think garlic powder maybe, and salt, and then you just pour it over the top of the summer squash in the pan. That gets topped with the breadcrumbs and then some pads of butter and popped in the oven to bake for about half an hour. It definitely needed more salt than the recipe called for, and with more salt it was bearable to eat, but it just really wasn't. It really wasn't good. So please don't make this. When it was almost time for the mozzarella sticks to come out of the freezer, I went ahead and added my savory deep frying oil to this pan. This is oil that I have saved from previous frying activities. And then I also added some more unused olive oil so that I had enough for this recipe. I get the oil heated up to 350 degrees and then fry them about 3 at a time in the oil. And here's everything completed with some marinara sauce for dipping. And there on the bottom you can see that those mozzarella sticks did not turn out well. Those were the ones that had a single coating. And my youngest had made some honey lemon ice cubes that she wanted everyone to see. Wednesday we had leftovers, and then Thursday I am making some chicken noodle soup. I had made broth from the chicken we had Tuesday, and here I'm straining it out into a large pitcher. I'd already added water to my pot, and then I'm going to add 4 cups of chicken broth. I do go ahead and pour this into a fat separator to get some of the excess fat off the top before adding it into my pot. Then I get it on the stove, add some frozen carrots and some salt. And once that has come to a boil, I will add the rest of the package of egg noodles. This is about half of a bag. Then come the spices. I've got thyme, oregano, and parsley. And then it's time to cut up some of the leftover chicken from Monday night's dinner. Once this is chopped up, this will go in the pot and heat until the noodles are finished cooking. I always like to have soup like this in a big mug, and we even have one that says chicken soup on it, and the kids always vie to get that particular mug. Thankfully, they're not too cutthroat about it and are happy just to get the soup. But this is dinner ready to eat. And we also ate this for Friday night's dinner. On Saturday, the last meal of the week, I am making ham and beans and cornbread. I've got this large jar of beans added to this pot, and then I had a bag of a ham bone with some drippings from making a ham last year that I'd stuck in the freezer. And I just pour that into the pot, get it mixed up, and then simmer on the stove while I make the cornbread. The youngest child is back again to help with dinner, and she wanted to help make the cornbread. So I'm having her mix the dry ingredients together while I collect the wet ingredients. First is flour, followed by cornmeal, baking powder, and salt. These are all sifted, which she ended up needing some help with the sifting. And then she's going to mix the dry ingredients together until they are well combined. Then we will start adding the wet ingredients. We've got a cup of milk, some melted butter, and 1 egg, which I will scramble up. I let my daughter pour this in and then mix it until it's just moistened. Then my cast iron skillet gets sprayed with olive oil. I check her mixing skills, and then it gets poured into the cast iron skillet. I give it a little shake to make sure it levels out, and then it goes in a 400-degree oven for about 25 minutes. Now, both times I have made this cornbread, since getting this oven, it has come out a little bit dark, so next time I'm only going to do it for about 20 minutes. But here is the finished meal. It was delicious, and thank you for coming along for this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!